In The Hobbit, we find a group of dwarves who have lost their homeland to the dragon Smaug, who craved their gold. This small band of dwarves, along with Bilbo the Hobbit and Gandalf the Wizard, go on a quest to retake their homeland. The odds are against them the whole way. They must go without the aid of their brethren in the Iron Hills. They have to survive the attacks of goblins and wolves. They are attacked and imprisoned by elves, and their friends at Laketown only bless their journey on the terms that they get to share in the plunder. Still, despite these difficulties, this courageous band makes it to Erebor, their home mountain. Now, in Erebor, the dwarves anticipate finding two things primarily. The first is a fire-breathing dragon. The second is great wealth, and especially the arkenstone, which symbolizes the right of dwarvish rule from the Lonely Mountain. With great peril, and a couple of unfortunate mishaps, Laketown, they retake back their homeland, their kingdom, and their gold. It is at this point a new problem, which is actually an old problem, unfolds. This problem is epitomized in the Hobbit movies with this statement from Balin.
Dragon sickness. I've seen it before. That look. A terrible need. It is a fierce and jealous love, Bilbo.
The gold in the mountain has a curse on it known as dragon sickness. Now at first, this may seem like a way to explain away Thorin's moral failings, but upon closer examination, Balin is not being poetic or trying to cover for his king's bad behavior. There really is a sickness over that gold. Here's the data. To begin, in Arda, which is the name of Earth there, we find the best craftsmen are able to tie their will into the items they create. The chief example of this, of course, is the Ring of Power. We watch as Sauron works his will through the ring, hurting its users, drawing it back to himself. But this is not the only example. Elvish blades also, such as Sting, Glamdring, and Orcrist, glow blue at the presence of goblins, eager to kill. This is because the elves of Gondolin who made them willed these weapons to kill goblins, and the goblins know it. We read in The Hobbit, "He held out the sword which Thorin had worn, the sword which came from the troll's lair. The great goblin gave a truly awful howl of rage when he looked at it, and all his soldiers gnashed their teeth, clashed their shields, and stamped. They knew the sword at once. It had killed hundreds of goblins in its time, when the fair elves of Gondolin hunted them in the hills or did battle before their walls. They had called it Orcrist, goblin cleaver, but the goblins simply called it biter. They hated it, and hated worse anyone that carried it. Murderers and elf friends, the great goblin shouted. Slash them, beat them, bite them, gnash them. Take them away to dark holes full of snakes, and never let them see the light again." Obviously, the goblins are not big fans. To be honest, neither is Thorin, the wielder of Orcrist. Dwarves and elves have a historic feud, which Thorin certainly takes part in. He keeps the sword, however, for the very reason that its craftsmanship was of such a fold that he knew the sword would aid him in encounters with orcs and goblins. This brings us back to the gold in the mountains. It was mined by the dwarves for 800 years before Smaug showed up. They had an immeasurable amount of rubies, jewels, and silver. They were constantly storing it up, mining for it, and turning it into beautiful things. They were experts at their craft. But what did they use the gold for? What will did they weave into it? The dwarves definitely used their gold to grow in standing as a kingdom, but after a point, the gold was gathered and worked with for the joy of having gold. The dwarves erected large statues made of their treasure, as well as kept stockpiles and hills of it in their halls. While perhaps unintentionally, the dwarves made themselves sick by creating gold monuments, which had as their purpose to be adored. The more they made and the more they cached together, the deeper the sickness grew, until eventually Thror, Thorin's grandfather, fell ill to its will. But the dwarves are not the only ones who could fall to this sickness. Even Bilbo, a hobbit with a natural resistance to enchantments, felt it. Here's what Tolkien describes as the dwarves sing about their gold, their homeland, and Smaug the Terrible. "As they sang, the hobbit felt the love of beautiful things made by hand, and by cunning, and by magic moving through him. A fierce and jealous love, the desire of the hearts of the dwarves." In a tragic sense, the dwarves had crafted their own doom. This is evident in the name of the enchantment over the gold. It is called Dragon Sickness, and it is named so because the enchantment bears striking resemblance to the greed of dragons for plunder and treasure. And a dragon is exactly what Mount Erebor received. Thus, it makes sense that when Thorin returned to the gold, long enchanted by his people, long guarded by a dragon, and long yearned for by himself, that he fell into the pit of dragon sickness which had taken his grandfather. Fortunately, Thorin finds his way in the end. His parting line to Bilbo is,
"If more of us valued food and cheer and song above hoarded gold, it would be a merrier world."
Thorin's remark here is a statement worth taking to the bank. See what I did there? And I think it is a statement which shines through in The Lord of the Rings. Does this blow your mind? Well then strap on your sword, grab your walking stick, subscribe, and click this video.